the government effectively only understands a very small proportion of their data, right? And their comprehension of what their data even means is very minimal today. And that when you ask firms about, well, you're familiar with your transactional data, but what if you created a data partnership with somebody else? They can't even comprehend what those possibilities would be. Some very successful groups like Walmart have created data partnerships with vendors to great success, but they've done that in stovepipes, where they've taken out features of their data and mixed it to get some success. But in the short term, the reality is that data owners have these reasons to not share their data, and those are primarily based because of control and security issues. And so what we want to try to do is extend the opportunities up front for people to intermingle their data, to ask more sophisticated questions, right? And the reason is maybe counterintuitive, right? It's not because of the bottom things, which people talk about first. It's because we want more data, because we can get more usefulness out of it, generate return on our investment. The second thing is it just makes good business to have security. It makes users feel better. It makes the data owners feel more secure. And the last thing, which I'll talk about at the end, focusing on some European examples, is it may just become illegal and impossible to operate if you can't control your data in a very specific way. Okay? So one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is, what's the term that you're using for cell level access? Cell level security. Okay. So I find none of these terms to really be accurate into what those features try to accomplish, right? Security to some means one thing about exploitation, about being able to escalate privileges. It's sort of a level of visibility, who can see what. It's a combination of controls, some compliance aspect to it. Fundamentally, it comes down to being able to control your data in the manner that's most appropriate, right? And there are two reasons that we want to do this. First, the traditional RDBs can't handle the scale, right? And so data has been split up for those reasons. But the second is that we don't want users to have access to the data unfettered, right? Nobody wants any of us to be able to see everything. And there's no scenario out there where that's the case. So control is really the optimal thing here. And the more control that we can add to the data, the better. Okay, just a few more thoughts on the front. Auditing is a key way that people will ensure compliance or will ensure data integrity. But as we pass data around to third-party vendors, it becomes less secure. You lose control over it infinitely. And that even with auditing, right, taking a look at who can see things in this example of credit card checks, it's not a really good way to control information. There's some concerns which I'll address in that. So I think you guys know this, right? Some security features exist traditionally, but there are some costs, right? And potentially the advantage in Accumulo is that it's secure by design. There's no upfront cost, and there's potential to enhance functionality without allowing people to turn it off, so you just get extreme advantages. Okay, so now we'll talk about some examples. Here we go. All right, so we'll go in reverse order here. So this is an example of electronic health record. We have a guy, Josh E, right? And he's from wherever. His sex is questionable. He's of a certain age, right? And his disease is he's addicted to a chemo, right? This is the kind of basic data that you would see in electronic health record, right? So the way electronic health records operate today is basically just an audited fashion, right? Where whoever accesses that data, right, we just want to track who they are, what's the reason that they're accessing this information, right? So we got Ken, he's the nurse, Susan, insurance. You got Barry, he's trying to do something for a death panel, right? So he wants to observe some data. And then, Bill S., who's Josh's life partner, he's also kind of involved in this process, right? And then you have this other aspect of it is that this data is going to be taken, it's going to be bundled up, it's going to be sent to other people, right? So classic, has this data. But as you step through all these pieces, the user, right, in this case, the patient has lost control of their data. And they don't really have any way to atomically control the parts of the electronic health record that they want to have sent out. Okay. So today, this is what it looks like. Your hospital has all of your information, and you, as the consumers, right, you have to go in and pull and fetch all this data. But what we want to try to move to is a place where the consumer really controls the data, and they design what are the access labels and controls for it so people can pull it out. And they can make the decisions if the labs or if the death panel or if the other folks, if they're the ones that can pull those elements out, right? I want to go this backwards for a second. So another great example is after Hurricane Katrina, there was an effort to take missing persons and reunify them, right? And one of the things that happened here was that there was dispersed data sets, multiple databases were put up, but in the effort to reunify, each of these databases held significant but incomplete parts about missing people, conflicting evidence was found in these databases, but there's a regulatory issue where federal, local, and state governments were holding these things in different systems, and they couldn't integrate them, right? And so there's a lot of false information, a lot of problems connecting these dots to ultimately save people or reunify loved ones. And so some statistics from this are, relatively small in probably the terms that we're thinking, but still impactful nevertheless. 15 different databases set up, about 1.5 million records, 40,000 people, and yet only just a little over 100 people were actually reunified, right? And so this is just a very classic example of where you have this disparate data. Because you can't have the control, you can't disambiguate misleading information and create some sense of it. I'll just see that. What's that? Yeah, it's animation. Yeah, sorry. Can't handle it, huh? Who would have thought of this? Okay, there we go. So one of the, some of the opportunities here is that owners, right, in the broadest sense, have the opportunity to create policies that allow this fine-level access to the data. But there is an inherent risk there that if you anonymize the data in such a way, you can still do some fuzzy analytics, which allow you to reconstruct the records, and there could be some potential problems there. So it's definitely an area of research. And we can have additional talks on data labeling and schemes for that can be important. Auditing, which is currently an effective method for control, it's good, but it's not complete. And it's not complete because it operates just like a credit card report. You have an idea of who pulled the record out, and maybe some sense of why they did that. But you don't really know what they did with it after. Once they pulled it, it goes off and they continue everything. You pull it off your desktop. So, the important thing and sort of the power that we have here is to give the users control. Ultimately, that will give us more data and allow us to expand capabilities. One thing to look to is what's happening in Europe. And I think this signals some really bad times for big companies here in the United States. So I don't know, does anybody follow kind of the European one? Okay, so this guy knows. Oh, Vine, okay. So the Europeans are totally crazy, right? And they have some very unusual thoughts about personal privacy. And here are just some articles from this week where European Commission is forcing big American companies like Amazon and Facebook. The origin of these companies is less important. These are huge internet companies to really eliminate data and to give users back the control. And these companies are going to face real challenges in terms of their underlying technology if they can't have this kind of high-level access that we've been trying to build out here. So this is a potential big sign for companies and for groups to really think about security up front and to continue to extend the existing applications that have been put out there. And a few companies that we've been talking to listed here have very similar problems, right? They all face regulatory issues. They all face very data-intensive compute problems, but they all face the same problem, which is that they don't have a mechanism to bring their data together and to interchange it in ways that are most important, right? So that's my thought. I'm sure nobody wants to talk because it's late, but if you have any questions,